back. Very welcome back. Very welcome back. Okay, in this video we'll be covering chapter 4th, 5th and 6th of class 7th NCERT Geography. Alright. So the 4th chapter is about the air, right? What is air? Surrounded by a huge blanket of air. The earth is surrounded by a huge blanket of air known as the atmosphere. Yes, important fact here, it's given. Do you know the carbon dioxide released in the atmosphere creates a greenhouse effect by trapping the heat radiated from the earth? Yeah. It is therefore called a greenhouse gas, okay, because the effect is same as that in a greenhouse experiment or a greenhouse box. And without which the earth would have been very cold to live. But the problem is with over emissions of carbon dioxide, global warming is happening all over place. Now, a very interesting fact was known that, okay, even humans take oxygen, plants also take oxygen. Even humans inhale nitrogen, but they, while exhaling, nitrogen is also exhaled. But plant don't have a mechanism to absorb nitrogen from the air. So that's quite peculiar. I mean, there is a system of absorbing oxygen by the plants. Why didn't they have an absorption, a nitrogen absorption mechanism, right? So that's interesting, and I'm telling this because plants do require nitrogen, right? Yeah, so interesting. And they take nitrogen from the soil, right? There are nitrogen fixing bacteria, there is a proper nitrogen cycle, and yeah, so that was quite interesting. Yes, plants, apart from taking oxygen for their respiration, they also excrete oxygen as a waste product when they are undergoing process of photosynthesis. And yes, the product is, the input is carbon dioxide. So somehow it's the cycle is maintained, that is, we exhale carbon dioxide, plants inhale carbon dioxide, by which they make food, and they exhale, in the process of the photosynthesis, oxygen is a byproduct, so that a balance is maintained. But the problem is, the more we cut the trees, this balance would not be in equilibrium, and hence this is one of the reasons why we should plant trees more and more, so as to let there be more oxygen in the area and less of carbon dioxide. Yes. Then we move to structure of atmosphere. Very important for the exam perspective. As you see the diagram here, you see up till 10 to 13 kilometer there is troposphere, where maximum the most of the air is here, right? 99% of air is in the troposphere, and the most of the weather phenomenon, rainfall, fog, hailstorm, are in this layer full of clouds, just above which, okay, we see the temperature is decreasing in troposphere, right? That is the effect of height away from this earth, right? And then again it increases owing to the fact that here it is ozone layer which absorbs the sunlight and doesn't let the UV to pass, and hence this, you see, for a while, for a tropopause up till 20 kilometer or so, the temperature is constant, but after that the temperature increases. So somewhere here we find, the increase from about 30 to 32 kilometer is very high, right? So somewhere here is what is our ozone layer. So this is stratosphere, where the temperature rises after a fall in troposphere, but there is no clouds, and then it's this layer is used for all kinds of air travel or jet movement, so on and so forth. The stratosphere from 13 kilometer up till 50 kilometer, right? So after that we have mesosphere. Again, there is fall in the temperature, right? Definitely the meteoroids burn in this layer, entering from the space. Then we have thermosphere. In the thermosphere, temperature rises rapidly with increasing in height. Ionosphere is a part of this layer. It extends between 80 to 400 kilometer. By the way, mesosphere was up till 80 to 85 kilometer. And thermosphere, yes, since having the ions, they help in radio transmission. And finally, exosphere, the uppermost layer of the atmosphere, is known as exosphere. The layer has very thin air. The light gas like helium, hydrogen float into the space from here. Okay. Then a very important terminology which most people confuse, the difference between weather and climate. Weather is the day-to-day condition of atmosphere, and climate is a long-term, you can say, integration of weather for say 10 years, 20 years. So that is climate. The average weather condition of a place for a longer period of time represents the climate of a place, right? Next we move to temperature. Degree of hotness or coldness of air is called temperature. Insolation, we know what is insolation. This was interesting. The standard unit of measuring temperature is degree Celsius. It was invented by Anders Celsius. Okay, so that was a new information. Yes, this was quite interesting information, that temperature in cities is much higher than that of the villages. This is the reason, because the concrete and the metals in the buildings and the asphalt of the road get heated up during the day, and they release heat during the night. Okay, so the night is not as cold as it should have been, right? And the crowded high-rise building of the cities trap the warm air and thus raise the temperature of the cities. Okay, so it's a kind of what to say, a kind of cave where the every building is trying to isolate the air from moving. Air pressure, it was also interesting. The areas where the temperature is high leads to evaporation, leads to the air warming, and hence warm air have cloudy sky. On the other hand, cold areas don't have the cloudy sky, they have clear sky. That's why if you watch some vlogs, you won't of some Russia, you won't find many clouds, right? Yeah. So that was the interesting part. Wind is the movement of air from high pressure to low pressure, right? And there are three kinds of winds. It's quite important that winds have been divided into three parts: the permanent winds, the seasonal winds, and the local winds. The permanent winds, the trade winds, the westerlies and the easterlies, are the permanent winds. They blow constantly throughout the year in a particular direction. The seasonal winds, these winds change their direction in different seasons. For example, monsoons in India. Okay. And finally, the local winds, these blow only during a particular period of the day or a year in a small area, right? So permanent winds, their nature of movement is permanent. For example, if you see in the map, these are the westerlies, then the easterlies, prevailing easterlies, polar easterlies, and these are the trade winds. Why trade winds? Why they are named trade winds? Because using these, the the voyagers and the trade people, for example, the Indians, the Arabs, right? They use these winds to trade. Okay, hence they are called as trade winds. And seasonal winds, for example, monsoon, and local winds, for example, the Lu. All right. Moisture. Moisture in air at any time. Okay, moisture can also be in your bread, but moisture in air is known as humidity, right? And as the air gets warmer, its capacity to hold the water vapor increases, so it becomes more and more humid. Okay, yeah. For example, on a humid day, clothes take longer. Yeah, that's fine, but uh, you know, the regions where the warm air is there, okay, warm current moves. The warm current causes warm ocean current causes the air to get warm, and hence you will find those regions that since the warm air has a more capacity to hold water vapor in it, that region you'll find a different kind of vegetation compared to a cold current leading to cold wind, which leads to a desert. For example, the western part of the continent, you will find things like Mediterranean forest, because there is some kind of vegetation, but the eastern part, more of a desert is found, right? We'll discuss later. So this was yes, there are three types of rainfall. One is the cyclonic rainfall, second is the orographic rainfall, and third is the convectional rainfall. You can easily say cyclonic rainfall, how the cold current, it tries to push the warm current above it, warm air current above it, and when the warm current rises, it condenses water dribble. Upon condensing, it falls. Then is orographic rainfall, the warm current upon finding this mountain, is nowhere it has to go but to rise, and upon rising condenses and form. It's also known as relief rainfall. And finally, convectional rainfall, heavy evaporation causes heavy formation of clouds. Heavy, every plants and leaves will try to transpirate, leading to water vapor accumulation. And yes, so these are three kinds of rainfall. And next we have, yeah, the three other types of precipitation. Other interesting do you knows is snow, sleet, and hail. Now snow is the white thing you see, sleet is a mixture of snow and water, and hail is when that snow, it condenses to form a kind of a transparent thing, right? So it's known as hail, right? Now so let's summarize. By the way, this diagram is very important, right? Yes, equatorial low pressure doldrums, then horse latitudes of 30 to 35, right? Then subpolar low pressure, high pressure, right? Very important diagram. Okay, so we discussed three kinds of winds. The three kinds of winds were, the first was the seasonal wind, second was the permanent wind, and the third was the local wind, right? Then we discussed what are the three kinds of, how does three kinds of moisture occur. A, convection. B was orographic, and C was uh, you know via currents, cold current pushing the warm current, leading to condensation, right? Then we also saw the structure of atmosphere, and the troposphere up till 13, stratosphere up till 45, then mesosphere up till 80 to 85, and then thermosphere up till 400, right? One interesting thing to know was that plant can take oxygen from the air, but they can't take nitrogen from the air. And the other was the hot areas have cloudy atmosphere, but the cold areas have the clear atmosphere, owing to the fact that the hot areas lead to more convection and hence more cloud formation. And finally, the difference between snow, sleet, and hail was also a thing to know, right? So that was about the chapter number 4. Yeah, 4. Next, we move to chapter number 5, that is water. Okay, glossary. Glossary says it's an what is terrarium? Terrarium. It's an artificial enclosure for keeping small house plants. By the way, terra means dry, right? It has come from the Sanskrit word. Terra means dry, and terracotta, right? Terracotta or terrestrial. We have already discussed this. Watch the videos. Okay, so water. The process by which the water continually changes its form and circulates between the oceans and atmosphere and land is known as water cycle. Okay? Process by which water continuously changes its form. Very interesting definition. And circulates between oceans and atmosphere and land is known as water cycle. Very interesting. The same water that oh my god, it was such a great philosophy to why we should be envious, why we should be enemy to each other, or we should be feeling great that the water which is flowing, which I drank, must have been once upon a time drunk by Krishna, Shiva, or Buddha, or Jesus, right? So these great personalities once drank the same water which today I am drinking or you are drinking, right? Because none of the water has been lost or is lost, it just circulates. So we should be grateful that a part of Buddha, a part of Shiva, or part of Krishna is also inside me, right? So why to be, a fight between each other, fight between the gods? Such a great philosophy from the NCERT. And next was a very interesting that about lakes. Yeah, the major sources of fresh water are river, ponds, springs, and glaciers. The ocean bodies and the seas contain the salty water. The water of the oceans is salty or saline as it contains a large amount of dissolved salts. Most of the salt is sodium chloride or the common table salt that you eat. That was quite mundane. Let's see what is interesting. Yes, so this graph is interesting where it shows major seas, lakes, and rivers. Okay, now let's discuss major lakes of the world, right? So if we start from the where to start? Let's start from Australia. All right. So in Australia, we have an important lake, Lake Eyre. Okay, Eyre, EYRE. So it is the deepest point of Australia. So that's an important lake of Australia. Now in New Zealand, there is an important lake, Lake Taupo. Okay, and apart from Oceania, if we move to Indonesia, the Indonesia has an important lake, Toba. Okay, Toba. Let's come to Asia. Okay, Turkey. So Lake Van in Turkey is the saltiest lake in the world. The next saltiest is the Dead Sea with I just saw it was around 340 340 grams per 1000 gram. Okay, so if you take a 1 kg of water, you will get 340 grams of salt. That's humongous. As far as normal seas, the average sea is concerned, you will get 35 grams for a kg of water, right? Okay, let's now move to other lakes. Lake Ladoga in Russia, Lake Omega in Russia, then Caspian Sea is the largest lake in the world. Yeah, it's here, you can see. So this is the C-shaped Caspian Sea is here. Then Aral Sea, right to of Caspian Sea, almost, very deplorable condition, very bad condition, owing to the fact that they have grown cotton near the by taking the water from the Aral Sea. Then Lake Urmia in Iran, also facing lots of problem. People are constructing houses near Lake Urmia, right? Okay. Then we have another lake in Iran, Darya-e-Namak. Okay, again in Iran. Okay, apart from that, so Caspian Sea, Aral Sea, then this is Lake Balkash. Okay, Balkash Lake in Kazakhstan. By the way, the Caspian Sea is bordered by Iran in south, Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan in east. Then we have in the west and north we have the Russia, and in west southwest, if you say, Azerbaijan in southwest. So that was the bordering countries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 countries are bordering Caspian Sea. 2 countries border Aral Sea, that is Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. And Balkash Lake is completely in Kazakhstan. And Lake Baikal, which is further, this is Baikal Lake, the deepest lake in the world. It is completely in Russia, right? Then somewhat here, the origins of Brahmaputra, we have Mansarovar Lake. Indus, Brahmaputra, Satluj all originate from this region, right? Mansarovar Lake. And in Cambodia, we have Toile Sap Lake, where Mekong passes. Okay. So this was all about Asia. Now, if we move to Africa, there are important lakes. First of all, this is Chad, Lake Chad. Lake Chad is the boundary is the Chad, Nigeria, and Cameroon, 4 countries. Then also the fact that Africa is tearing apart in 2 halves. Okay, this is quite well known, and due to tear and rainfall, the lakes are formed on the margins, right? So this is roughly the Y-shaped the tearing. Okay, so on these Y have the lakes formed. Okay, now if we see the left portion of the Y, or you say the tongue, the left tongue has the lakes like, okay, from north to south I'm going, Lake Albert, then Edward, then Kibo. Then we have Tanganyika, and below Tanganyika we have Lake Nyasa / Malawi, right? So on the left, if we take complete left, there are 5 lakes. You can remember this with the acronym Ek Tanga, Tanga, एक तांगा नया, एक एक तांगा नया, तांगा वाला, right? So एक is Albert Edward Kibo, Albert Edward Kibo. Then we have Tanganyika. Then we have Nyasa oblique Malawi. Okay, now if we go to the eastern tongue. All right. So on the western, tongue, if you say, or the western arm of the letter Y, if you say, the only lake is Lake Turkana, and Lake Turkana is in Kenya. All right. Now, an interesting fact to know that above Lake Turkana in the Ethiopian highlands we have Lake Tana. Lake Tana is the source of Blue Nile River. So if you see here, so this is Blue Nile River, and at the end we have Lake Tana. Also on this Blue Nile River, so this is Blue Nile River, and left to Blue Nile River we have White Nile River. They meet at a place known as Khartoum in Sudan. Yes, interesting, which is the capital of Sudan, right? So you can remember the complete six lakes as Ek Tanga Naya Kare Tukuduk 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 Tukuduk. Okay, okay. On the middle of this tongue, this tongue has held a lake known as Lake Victoria. Okay, Lake Victoria doesn't lie on the fissure zone. Okay, so Lake Victoria, the countries surrounding Lake Victoria are Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. All right. So that was the lakes in Africa. Next, we move to South America. Now, the important South American lake is first Lake Titicaca. The highest lake in the world is the Lake Titicaca. It's on the border, on the Peru and Bolivia border. We have Lake Titicaca. The second lake is very important lake in Venezuela is Lake Maracaibo, and lots of oil field in the Lake Maracaibo of Venezuela, right? All right. So next we move to the North American lakes. The North American lakes, first of all, if we move to the Great Lakes region, Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake, and it is the okay, by the way, before that, this complete 5 lake in this region, you see, it borders the USA and the Canada. The only lake which completely lies in the United States is Lake Michigan. Okay, so which is down here where there is L written here, Lake Huron. The L written is Lake Michigan. Okay, so we start from left to right. So first is Lake Superior, second is Lake Michigan, to south of Superior. To the north we have Lake Huron, okay, and again to the right of Huron we have Lake Ontario, and south of Ontario, southwest of Ontario, we have Lake Erie. Okay, yeah. So these are lakes. Then again, this is Salt Lake City near the Great Salt Lake, important lake, right? And another lake is Lake Hutos, which completely lies in Mexico, Lake Hutos. Okay. By the way, the Canada is a country of lakes, and which starts from the Great Bear. You can see here, Great Bear Lake, then the Great Slave Lake, then the Reindeer Lake, then Lake Winnipeg, Lake Manitoba. So these are 4 important lakes of Canada, right? So yeah, so that was the important lakes we discussed. Very important to know. Yes, the salinity, as we discussed here, the salinity is the amount of salt in 1,000 grams of water. The average salinity of the ocean is 35 parts per 1,000. Dead Sea in Israel has salinity of 340 grams. And very interesting to know that swimmers can float in it because the increased salt content make it very, very dense. Yeah. Distribution of water bodies: three-fourths of the Earth's surface is covered by water. That is 97.3 of the water is saline, unfit for the human consumption. And hence we should, protect the fresh water as much as we can, right? Then we move to an important concept of ocean circulation. By the way, March 22 is celebrated as World's Water Days. Okay, so that was quite interesting to know. Yes, ocean circulation is an important technical topic, because up till now the topics were, factual, like lakes, right, and distribution of water bodies, or what is salinity, how much is salinity. Ocean circulation is the technical and the only technical thing in this chapter. First is wave. Now, how to remember? Many people confuse with the waves and tides, which is caused by what? Wave as W, winds have W. So that is how you'll remember. Waves are formed when the winds scrape across the ocean surface. The stronger the winds blows, the bigger the wave becomes. Okay, so let's read. When the water on the surface of the ocean rise and falls alternately, they are called waves. Okay. Water on the surface of ocean rises and falls alternately. They are called waves. Now, see, there can be various ways how wave can generate. The regular source is wind, but the other sources are like earthquake, a volcanic eruption, a landslide in the ocean can cause large amounts of ocean waters to shift, causing a wave. This is known as, a tidal wave is known as tsunami. That may be as high as 15 meters. Okay, so interesting. The largest tsunami ever measured was 150 meters high. These waves travel at a speed of more than 700 kmph. The tsunami of 2004, widespread damage in the coastal area of India. Yes, Sindra Point was submerged after tsunami. So that was wave. Done. Next we move to tide. Interesting, very interesting. Tides are rhythmic rise and fall of ocean water twice in a day. So that's see, both of tides and waves, there is fall and rise. The difference being the source, and the difference being, the periodicity, the rhythmicity. The tide has a rhythm, the wave doesn't have a rhythm. So that was a new information, right? It's high tide when the water covers much of the shore by rising its high level. Yeah. Now, the two kinds of tides are neap tide and spring tide. Spring tide is a high tide, neap tide is a low tide, right? Yes, and in both the full moon as well as the new moon, there are spring tides. And by the way, the moon takes around 27.3 days to revolve around the earth. So, in that way, every 15 days, because half of that region is covered in 15 days, so every 15 days there is a spring tide, right? For example, if on 1st of January there is a Purnima, then roughly on 14th or 15th January there would be Amavasya, right? So this Amavasya and Purnima will be the high tide, right? And this is because the both the sun and the moon, they are on the same line. Since they are on same line, they cause a high tide. But when the sun and the moon and the earth they form a 90-degree, it causes a low tide, and it is known as a neap tide. If we see, or if you can relate somehow, neap is like a no, right? Or a narrow tide. So that's how we can relate, the two words and probably remember, right? Spring is like flowers and lots of abundance everywhere. So spring is, quite relatable. And very interestingly to know, the high tides are very helpful in navigation because they raise the water level close to the shores. This helps the ship to arrive at the harbor more easily. The high tides also help in shipping because more and more fishes come to near to the shore. So and lots of high tides, they also help in generation of electricity, right? Now, if we move to the ocean currents, the third ocean circulation, right? So, if we see the warm areas, because of greater insolation, even the ocean water gets hot, and the temperate areas and the polar areas, due to less of insolation, that the water is cold, and due to equilibrium, the water tends to move from equator towards the pole and vice versa. So this is the ocean current, right? And some of the examples, some of the names of ocean currents, if you let me, if you allow me to tell, the cold currents are, the Peru current, also known as Humboldt current, in the west coast of South America, Humboldt of Peru current. In the west coast of South Africa, we have Southern Africa, we have Benguela current. And in the west coast of Australia, we have West Australian current. These all are cold current, right? Now, if we move to the northern side, from North Pole towards equator, on the west coast of North America, we have Californian current. On the west coast of the Morocco and Europe, we have the Canaries current near the Canary Island. And on the west, yeah, no west coast. So on the east coast of Russia, Kamchatka, we have Oyashio current, right? So three above, three down. Just one more. Learn or try to remember the Labrador current also. Seven cold currents. If we move to the warm currents, on the the east coast of South America, we have Brazilian current. On the just before that, pardon me, there are some important cold currents like Falkland current also, right? This is quite important current. Falkland current also is important on the Antarctic to the Falkland Islands, passing through that. So yeah, west wind drift. So eight cold currents. Okay, right? So we were on the hot currents. So the Brazilian current from equator down to this. On the east coast of South America, we have Brazilian current. On the east coast of Africa, we have the Auglahas current, right? And on the east coast of Australia, we have the East Australian current, right? Now, on the east coast of the North America, we have the Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic Drift. On the east coast of Asia, we have Kuroshio. On the east coast of Africa, we have Somali current, right? So that were, like six warm current. Others include like Alaska current, which is warm, North Pacific drift, which is warm, right? So these are some of the warm currents. Equatorial counter current and north equatorial current. These are, like 8 warm currents and 8 cold currents. And the ocean current influence the temperature conditions of the area. The warm current brings about the warm temperature over the land surface. The areas where the warm and cold currents meet provide the best fishing grounds of the world. Seas around the Japan and the eastern coast of North America are such examples. The area where a warm and cold current meet also experience foggy weather, making it difficult for the navigation, right? So that was like the end of this chapter. So let's summarize. We started with what is, the water cycle. Then in very philosophical area we get on about the water. We saw the various lakes of the world, distribution of water bodies, definition of what is salinity and roughly the average salinity in the world, and the salinity of Dead Sea we also saw. Then we saw the 3 kinds of ocean circulation, that is the sea, that is the tide, right? The wave and the ocean currents. We also saw the trick to remember waves with winds. We also saw the difference between the tides and the wave. Tides are rhythmic, waves are not rhythmic. And finally, we saw many kinds of ocean currents on the map and the lakes on the map, right? We learned or we figured out 8 warm currents and 8 cold currents. So that's done for this chapter. Finally, we move to this chapter, last chapter for this video, that is natural vegetation and wildlife. See, the growth of the vegetation depends on the temperature, moisture, slope, and the thickness of soil. 4 parameters. Natural vegetation can be classified to 3 broad categories: the forest, the grasslands, and the shrubs. The forest grow where the temperature and rainfall are plentiful to support a tree cover. Okay. The grasslands grow in moderate region and shrubs grow in the dry region. Okay. Now directly let's move to the forests, or the types of these, or these things, the forests, grasslands, and shrubs in detail. All right. So let's start with the tropical region. See, in the tropical region, either the forest may be evergreen based on rainfall. If the rain is less, then we will find a deciduous forest, and if the rain is further less, we'll find a tropical desert. Tropical grassland if the rain is further less, and if the rain is further less, we'll find a tropical desert. Okay. Yes, here it is written tropical desert. Right. Now let's see all these 4 one by one. Let's start with the most and then we'll go to the least. Okay, in tropical area, well rainfall, we'll find tropical evergreen forest. What is the characteristics? Hot and receive heavy rainfall throughout the year. The most characteristic feature of tropical evergreen forest is that all the trees don't shed their leaves at the time, and hence the forest looks evergreen, and hence the name. Another important part is the thick canopies, closely spaced trees. And finally, the new thing to learn is that these forests, the trees are not softwood, the trees are hardwood, like rosewood, ebony, and mahogany. Mahogany has been derived from the Sanskrit word mahaguni. Okay, and ebony, we saw how the inner part of ebony is black in color, and that's why we saw, the ebony superstars or the ebony film actress, so on and so forth. Okay, if the rain is further less, then we find, tropical deciduous forest. Oh, by the way, where are these regions? Tropical evergreen forest. The tropical evergreen forest are in the regions like, Brazil, Western Ghat region, in, Malaysia, Indonesia, all the equatorial region. We find tropical evergreen forests. Tropical deciduous forests are known as the monsoon forests in large parts of India, and the region experience seasonal changes. Because of seasonal changes in dry season, they conserve water by shedding their leaves. Again, the trees are hard. Yes, these forests shed their leaves all at a time, and hence they are not green, during dry seasons, hence not evergreen. North Australia, Central America. North Australia, Central America, and large part of India. Now, again, the hardwood trees, sal, teak. Sal is the Vishnu tree. Vishal. Sal, teak, neem, and sisham. Okay, like sal, shal, giri, shal. Okay. Next, we move to the areas of, tropical region. If the rainfall is further less, so it will form a tropical grassland. Okay, so occurs on either side of equator and extend till the tropics. The vegetation grows a moderate to low amount of rainfall. Okay, but see, the thing is, since the rainfall is sufficient, the shrubs, they grow, these grasslands grow to such a height, 3 to 4 meters in height. That's so much so that even the elephants can hide in it. And you'll find, the elephants in these grasslands, zebras, giraffes, savanna is the best example. Okay, savanna are tropical grasslands. But if you'll see these regions, the temperate grasslands, you won't find the elephants because of, absence of the tall grasslands where even the lions can hide. So even lions are not found in temperate grasslands. Okay, and finally we move to tropical deserts. Yes, the tropical deserts, by the way, the savanna is found in Kenya. The tropical, the deserts are located on the western margin of the continent. The vegetation cover is scarce because of scanty rainfall and scorching heat. Why western margins of the continent? Because we saw that the western margin of the continent in the tropical areas, their cold currents are there, right? For example, the regions of Australia, uh, the Great Western Australia Desert. Then we have the Atacama Desert, right? So these are the tropical deserts. By the way, Atacama is not a tropical desert, but I'm giving an example how the cold currents have led to the formation of these deserts. Okay. Yeah. So the the tropical grasslands are known as savanna in East Africa, campos in Brazil, and lalanos in Venezuela. Okay, so we discussed 4 types of forest. Is that clear? That's damn clear. If we move to higher areas, that is temperate areas, again we'll start with the most rainfall, that is temperate evergreen, then lesser rainfall, temperate deciduous, then even lesser rainfall leading to formation of temperate grasslands, and further lessened rainfall will lead to formation of temperate deserts. Okay, let's start with yeah with the the temperate evergreen forests. Now the temperate evergreen forests, let me scroll up. Yes, the temperate evergreen forests are located in mid latitudinal coastal regions. Quite, yes. See, the regions are very important. The temperate evergreen forests, and by the way, did you observe that the tropical evergreen, the tropical areas, either there is a tree or there is not. If there is a tree, the the wood is hardwood, right? So that was interesting to know. Everywhere I saw a hardwood. Let's move to temperate area. So the temperate evergreen forests are located in the areas are very important. That is southeast USA. Why east? Because on the eastern part of the continent you receive the warm currents. Warm currents, they have more capacity of moisture. The moisture laden capacity is more, and hence more rainfall leads to the evergreen forests. So southeast USA. Why south? Because it rainfall towards the tropical region on the eastern side of the continent is more pronounced as compared to the northern part, because as we go towards northern it's more of a chilling effect and the rainfall is lesser and lesser, and hence southern China, southeast USA, southeast Brazil, see everything is right, east and south, everything is so much connected and so much logical. I'm just loving it, enjoying it to study. But see, you'll now see a difference. The difference being that both hard and as well as softwood trees are found in temperate evergreen forest, that is oak, pine, and eucalyptus. Okay, so uh, that is what we have to see and look into. Oak, pine, and eucalyptus both are hard as well as soft trees. Lesser rainfall we'll go into temperate deciduous. Yes. See, again, the areas are very important. What are the areas of temperate deciduous forests? So temperate deciduous forests are, one thing is clear, again these areas will see into the northern part of areas just having lesser rainfall as compared to the evergreen temperate region will form temperate deciduous forest, right? And again they will be found in the eastern region, because on the western section we'll find the cold current, and since this is eastern region it will be above the temperate evergreen forest, because the region just above the equatorial or tropical region or equatorial region tropical region, is occupied by the temperate evergreen forest, and hence the regions would be northeastern part of USA, China, New Zealand, Chile. Okay, is northeastern part was clear or not? Yes, it was. It must have been definitely been clear. And yeah, definitely the coastal region of Western Europe, very important. Now the common trees are oak, ash, and beech. Okay, the birds are like pheasants and monals. So these are two beautiful birds, pheasant and monals. Such a beautiful bird. See its neck. Mono. All right. So that was temperate evergreen, temperate deciduous. Now, if we move to temperate grasslands, the difference between the temperate tropical grasslands and temperate grasslands, as I discussed already earlier, is the size of the grasses owing to the lesser rainfall in temperate deciduous as compared to the tropical deciduous, right? Uh, the grasses are short, but they are nutritious, right? And hence, the milk content, if you see in the grasslands of the cattle's, the milk contents is very great. The wild buffaloes, the bisons, the antelopes, all are found in the temperate regions. Milk in these regions as compared to India, the milk